Hi everyone. Today we are going to create a modular tooltip node that allows adding a tooltip to any 2D, 3D, and control nodes. We will also see how we can animate the tooltip in order to add polish to our game. As always, link to the final version of the code and to all the assets used are in the description. Let's get started. We will start by making a tooltip for 2D nodes. Then we will add 4 lines of code to support the 3D and control nodes. Our tooltip can work with any node that emits the mouse entered and mouse exited signals. Control nodes and every collision object natively emits these signals, so working with them is especially easy. In this scene, we have an area 2D which inherits from collision object with a nice sprite from Kenny assets. And we have this simple placeholder tooltip. We're going to start by creating a new script. It is going to inherit from node. We're going to call it tooltip. I'm going to use a script template I made called headers. Let's open the script and you can see it simply add headers according to Godot documentation style guide. To let the user control how the tooltip would look, we are going to create an export variable and we are going to call it visuals resource. It is going to be of type packed scene. Then the user can create whichever tooltip he wants and simply pass it to our tooltip node. We are now going to create a private variable called visuals, and it is going to be of type control, and it is going to be the actual tooltip itself. Then in our ready function we need to instance this visual node. So we simply are going to say visuals is going to be equal to the visual resource instance, and of course we need to add it as a child. We would now like to know on which object to listen to the mouse entered and mouse exited signals. So we are going to create an export variable. We're going to call it owner path, and it is going to be of type node path. This way the user can use any type of tree structure he wants. Now we are going to create an onReady variable in which we are going to get the actual owner. So we're going to call it owner node, and we are going to use get node, and we are going to use the owner path. Now in our ready function we can say owner node connect mouse entered to a function we are going to create in a second called also mouse entered, but with the private sign, and we are going to copy this line and connect the mouse exited and mouse exited. And I've made an error here, and I need to add another E at the end. We can now go ahead and create this mouse entered and mouse exited functions. So let's give ourselves some room and create the mouse entered function, which receives nothing and returns nothing. And we are going to take visuals and set them to be visible by using show. Now we will create the mouse exited function, which again receives nothing and returns nothing. And we are going to set our visuals to be hidden by calling the hide function. Now, in order to easily get to our tooltip node from anywhere in our project, we are going to add a class name to our script, and the class name is going to be simply Tooltip. Now we can go to our simple example, click on our base node, and we're going to add a tooltip by simply typing tooltip and choosing the correct one. And now we need to assign the base as being our owner, and we can add the placeholder tooltip we saw before. Now we can run by pressing F6 or the Run Current Scene button, and you can see it's visible at the beginning, which is not optimal. We're going to solve it in a second, but if I hover over our owner, we can see the tooltip, and when I leave, the tooltip disappears. So let's go ahead and set the default behavior of the tooltip to be hidden. We're going to call visuals.hide. Now we want to create some delay from when the mouse enters the object to when the tooltip shows. So we're going to create a private variable which is going to be of type timer. In our ready function, we are going to initialize this timer. So we are going to set timer to be a new timer. We are going to add it as a child of the tooltip. And we're going to connect the timeout signal of our timer to a function we're going to create immediately, which is going to handle showing the tooltip. So we'll call it custom show. So now, instead of calling visuals.show when the mouse entered the owner, we are going to start the timer with some delay, and we're going to create an export variable of type float. And again, I think I want to control the range, so we're going to set it like this, in a range of between, let's say, 0 to 10 with the jumps of 0.05. And this is going to take care of this error. And now, when the mouse entered, we're going to start the timer. When the timer finishes, we're going to call custom show. And when the mouse exits, we're going to call mouse exited. So let's create this custom show function, which receives nothing and returns nothing. And we're simply going to call visuals.show. But we also want to stop the timer, so we're going to call timer.stop. And we're going to copy it to mouse exited also. And the reason we copy it here is to make sure that if the user hover over the owner and leaves before the timer stops, that we won't show the tooltip. So now let's set some default value to delay, let's say half a second, and we can immediately play, and we can see that between the hover and the appearance of the tooltip, we have a delay of half a second. All that is left now is to control the tooltip position. In order to do this, we are going to create some more export variables. The first one is going to be whether or not we want the tooltip to follow the mouse. So it's going to be a variable called follow mouse, and it is going to be of type bool, and we're going to make sure it's initialized to be true. And we're going to add another export variable called offset in the x-axis, and I'm going to again control the range of it. It's going to be a float between 0 and, let's say, 100 with the jumps of 1. And we're going to copy this line and create another offset for the y. And this is going to set how far away from the mouse or the owner we're going to draw the tooltip. Now, I like to cast this two variables into a vector 2, which called offset, and this is just a preference of mine, so you don't have to do it. You can leave it like this. So the first function we are going to implement in order to draw the tooltip in the correct location is going to be called get screen position. It is going to receive nothing and return a vector 2, which is the position in which we want to draw the tooltip. So we're going to create a variable called position. We're going to initialize it to be a vector 2 with zeros, and we're going to return this position vector so that we get rid of this error. Now we want to handle the 2D case, which is the first case we are going to implement. So we are going to say if our owner node is of type node 2D, we are going to set the position to be equal the following function, the owner node dot get a global transform with canvas, and this is going to return a transform in the space of the viewport. And in order to transform from the transform itself to a vector 2, we're going to return the dot origin. Now we are going to override the process function because we want the tooltip to update its position based on the current mouse position. So we're going to override the function process. We're going to do it if and only if our visuals is visible. And for now, we're going to say that visuals.rectPosition is going to be equal to get screen position. And we can already run it, and you will see that when I hover, the tooltip now appears in the center of our owner. Now we want to handle the case when we want to appear next to the mouse. So we can say if follow the mouse is true, simply return get viewport, get mouse position. And because follow mouse is defaulted to be true, if we run now, you'll see that the tooltip follows the mouse. We're now going to take it one step further. We want the tooltip to be to the right of the owner or the mouse and above it. So we are going to change the way we calculate the rect position of our tooltip. We are going to delete this line for now, and instead we're going to define a new variable called base position or base pos, and we are going to set it to get screen position. And now we are going to define two new variables. One is going to be called final x, and it is going to be currently be the base position.x, and we are going to create another variable called final y, and it is going to be the base position in the y-axis minus the extents in the y-axis. And we still don't have this extents variable, but we're going to create it right now. It is going to be an onReady variable. And it is going to be equal to visuals rect size. And of course I have an error because my spelling is horrible. So let's fix this. And now we can finally set the visuals rect position to be equal to a new vector, which is simply the final x and final y. And now, if we run, we get an error here. And the reason is visuals is only initialized in our ready function. So we also need to initialize our extents in our ready function. So let's first of all delete this line. Make sure that we declare extents to be a vector 2. And now in our ready function, under the initialization of visuals, we'll calculate the extents, and we simply can say extents is equal to visuals dot rect size. And now we can run, and you can see that the tooltip appears to the right and to the top. Now let's insert our offset into the picture. So we simply need to add the offset in the x-axis and subtract the offset in the y-axis. And now let's test it. Let's set offset to be, I don't know, 20 and offset y to be 10, and run it again. And you can see that the tooltip is offsetted from the mouse by that amount of pixels. And if we cancel the follow mouse, you'll see that it is offsetted from the center of our owner. And this is working. So let's zero everything. And now let's watch what happens if our owner is at the edge of the screen. So if I hover now, you can see that the tooltip is getting out of the frame. So a tooltip is part of our user interface, and as such, we won't allow it to be outside of the screen. So we need to handle this case of when the tooltip extends the limits of our screen. So first of all, to allow for some control for the user, we are going to add two export variables, which we are going to again control their range. They are going to be padding in the x and padding in the y, and it is going to control how close to the edge we allow the tooltip to be. And I'm going to cast it again for a padding vector. Now, in our process function, we can't immediately know what the final x and final y would be. First, we are going to calculate the borders of our screen, and then we will see if the tooltip is out of those borders, we need to change the size. So the borders is going to be getViewport.size. and we are going to subtract padding from that. Now we want to test if we need to draw the tooltip on the left side of the owner or mouse, and we want to also test if we need to display the tooltip below our owner or the mouse. So we can test if our final X plus the extents in the x-axis is greater than our border in the x-axis, we need to set the final X to be to the left. So it's going to be base position X minus offset X minus extents X. And again for the Y, but this time on the opposite. So if final Y is less than padding in the Y-axis, we simply set the final Y to be the base position in the Y plus the offset in the Y. And that's it. We can already run it, and you can see that even in the edge, if I get too close, it's going to go to the left. And if I go too high, it's going to draw below, and any combination of those states. We can now also test the padding, let's say padding 10 on all axes, and now I can't really get to the edge. If I get to a distance of 10 pixels from the edge of the screen, I'm going to flip sides. Now we are going to do the same for 3D, but as you're going to see, it is going to be a matter of changing 2 lines of code. Here we can see that we have an area 3D, which is the castle in the center, and we have another nice model from Kenny Assets. We would now like the tooltip to show on the 3D space. So first of all, let's go to our area and let's add the tooltip node. Let's set the base to be our owner. And let's assign again this placeholder tooltip from the before. Now if we run, we can see that because we are following the mouse, it's already working, but if I set mouse follow to be false, you'll see that we see the tooltip at 0, 0 at the top left corner, and the reason is if we look at the function, because our owner is not node 2D, we return the position 0, 0. So now let's add those 2 lines of code I was telling you about to make ourselves support 3D. So if our owner node is spatial, we are going to set position to be equal to get the viewport, get the camera, and we are going to use a function called unProjectPosition, which returns the position in screen of a 3D point. And we are going to get the owner node, which is a spatial node, so we can get the global transform.origin. And that's it. Those are the 2 lines we need to add to control, to support 3D. And we can immediately run, and you'll see that now we get the tooltip in the correct position. And the reason is it's so low is because our castle position is actually slightly below where you see the trees inside the castle. So This is why it's so low, but we can very easily fix it by setting the offset to something like maybe 20 and I don't know 40, and um, you can see it's slightly more centered now, but you can change it to whatever you like. So I don't have an example for it, but you can trust me, it's going to work like this. We're going to add another 2 lines of code to also support control nodes, and to get the position of a control node in the screen, we can simply use owner node.get rect position, and any control node has a rect position, which is the position in screen space of this node. And this is as you can see here, this is going to let us draw a tooltip over any control node. So we are finished with creating the node. Now let's take some time and have fun with it. So we have this hexagonal map with the base in the center and 3 resource types: clay, wood, and stone. All these hexagons inherit from the same tile script, and the resource are all children of this resource scene, and the base is a child of this base scene. So if we want to add tooltips to our resources and to our base, all we need to do is edit these 2 nodes. So let's start with the base, because we only want to add this very simple tooltip to it. So I'm going to add the tooltip, assign the base as the owner, and I have created before a base tooltip, and I'm going to set it now, and that's basically it. I can run the scene now, and when I hover over my base, you can see I have a tooltip. So with this node, it's just a matter of 2 clicks and you have tooltip to any object in your game. Now for our resources, I want to add an animated tooltip that would be nicer and would add a lot of flair to our game. So for that purpose, I created a resource tooltip, and you can see it has an animation, and the animation is the icon kind of swirls in, and the text is getting revealed. So let's look at it a few more times. And I want this animation to happen every time we hover over a resource node. So you can see we have functions to call this animation player, and we can play it forward and backward and get a nice animation. There are 2 more functions, set textures and set value, and they help us customize our tooltip to fit the resource. So you can see the resource has 3 variables: the name, the amount, and the texture, and you want to connect those 3 variables to the fields that represent our tooltip. So in order to do that, we're going to go to our base resource scene. We are going to add a normal node, and we are going to call it resource tooltip. We're now going to attach a script to it, and we're going to give it some unique name because resource tooltip is taken. So we are going to call it resource tooltip, like this, and we are going to make it inherit from our tooltip script. And now we need to override some of the functions. So the first one we are going to override is the ready function, and here we are going to set the texture and the label of our tooltip. So we're going to say visuals set texture to our owner node dot texture, and visuals dot set value to our owner node resource name and our owner node value. Sorry, amount. Now we need to override the custom show and the mouse exited functions, because we don't want to simply hide and show our tooltip, we want to play the animation. So let's override the mouse exited function to, first of all, remember to stop the timer, and then call our visuals play show function, which, sorry, play hide, because we're overriding mouse exit. And in our custom show function, we are going to call play show, and those functions simply play the animation. So you can copy and paste it here and just change it to show. One final change, we're going to add to the ready function the line visuals.show to make sure that the parent is showing. And now let's run the correct complex 2D scene, and you can see that I have a tooltip over my base, and if I hover over the clay, we can see the animation. And for some reason, Godot doesn't like to play this animation when we move. So what I will do here is simply in our resource tooltip, I'm going to set the follow mouse to be false, and then add some offset, let's say 50 in the X. And now, because the tooltip is going to be static, if I run it again, we have the tooltip over the base, and we have the tooltip over the resources, and it is going to play the animation correctly. And now you can see that this stone, because it was going to be exiting the screen, is drawing the tooltip to the left. And that is it. Thank you so much for watching my tutorial. I made this tutorial as a prerequisite to a tutorial series in which I will create a full 3D RTS game in Godot. If that sounds like something you would want to watch, subscribe to get notified when the videos come out. As always, links to the code and the assets used are in the description. Thank you and have a nice day. Goodbye.